Hey, welcome to the briefing. What I'm going to cover with you today is this. When one call out hits the bottleneck, do not break the rest of the line. The shift has not even started, and the problem is already active. Material is staged, the job packet is ready, quality planned its coverage. Packout is set for the expected rate. The customer critical order is on the board. Then the call comes in. The qualified operator assigned to the bottleneck station is not coming in. Now, look at the absence for what it is. It may be completely legitimate. People get sick. Families have emergencies. Life does not care what the production schedule says. Blaming the operator does not put qualified coverage at the station, and it does not improve the supervisor's decision. The operating fact is simple. The one station controlling the line's effective output has no assigned operator. That is the condition the leader has to manage. The first reaction is usually fast. Find somebody, pull somebody, move people until the empty position is filled and the production board still looks intact. Quality has someone who understands the product. Material support has someone familiar with the line. Packout has an employee who has helped at the station before. Another line has a qualified operator who could probably cover it. That looks decisive. It may feel decisive, but filling the position is not the same as stabilizing the operation. The call-out created one problem. The reaction can create four more. Quality can lose coverage. Material support can become unreliable. Packout can become the next bottleneck. Another line can inherit the staffing gap. That is not staffing. That is moving one emergency around the building until every department gets a turn. The call-out does not have to break the line. The overreaction can. Tactical resolution is the direct action tool that fits this moment. The issue is active. It is already interfering with the objective. It cannot be postponed until next week. It cannot be avoided because the call-out has already happened. The permanent staffing correction is not available during the next 20 minutes, but a controlled stabilization move is still possible. That is what tactical resolution is for. It is not the permanent answer. It is not a recruiting plan. It is not the complete cross-training correction. It is not permission to place an unprepared employee into specialized work because the production schedule is loud. It is controlled stabilization. The leader reduces the active interference enough to keep the objective moving. The surrounding controls stay protected. The temporary limits are clear. The result is checked before the workaround becomes the next failure. That last part matters because temporary fixes have a bad habit of escaping their boundaries. Somebody says this will get us through the first hour. 6 hours later, the same person is still covering the station. Quality is behind, Packout is full, and nobody can explain when the temporary condition became the operating plan. By lunch, the temporary plan has seniority, a parking spot, and opinions about policy. That is not tactical resolution. That is improvisation without control. Manufacturing workforce pressure is real, but it does not solve this shift. Devin cannot recruit, train, qualify, and place a new operator at Station 6 before startup. He has the next few minutes, an exposed line, and a decision that can stabilize the floor or spread the damage. This is where leaders confuse fast action with command. They are not the same thing. You can move 4 people in 3 minutes and still make a weak decision. You can fill every visible opening and leave the wider production system less stable than it was before you moved anyone. A staffing move is not controlled just because someone filled the empty position. The whole line still has to work after that person moves. Look at the available people. The strongest cross-trained operator is already on another line. A quality technician knows the product. A material handler understands the process. A Packout employee has assisted at Station 6. The line lead knows the station, but also owns line balance, escalation, communication, and shift control. There are people in the building. That does not mean they are free capacity. Actually, let me make that more accurate. It does not mean they are prepared capacity, and it does not mean moving them is free. A pulse, a badge, and steel-toe boots do not equal spare labor. That is how an organization chart turns into a hostage note. Every person Devin pulls leaves another responsibility behind. Somebody else absorbs it, the work waits, or the control weakens. The cost moves. When quality, material support, Packout, the adjacent line, and the line lead all start looking like labor sources, the surrounding system disappears from the decision. You see one missing operator, and suddenly every other function looks movable. But those functions exist for a reason. Quality protects release confidence. Material support keeps the line supplied. Packout keeps finished product moving towards shipment. The line lead keeps the operation coherent. You cannot remove those controls and act surprised when the line develops new problems. That is not bad luck. That is a predictable consequence. Let's put this on the floor. Devin is a production supervisor at a high-mix industrial component plant. The plant builds several product families across shared assembly lines. Some stations can absorb a small staffing adjustment. Station 6 on line 2 cannot. Every unit on line 2 must pass through Station 6 before final verification and packout. The station combines a specialized assembly sequence with an in-process verification point. The operator needs to understand the fixture sequence, the work instruction, the assembly condition, and the signal that tells them the unit is not ready to move downstream. This is not a position where Devin can place whoever happens to be standing nearby. Line 2 must complete a customer critical order during the first half of the shift. Material is available, setup is complete, quality has planned coverage, packout is staged, and the carrier pickup is the next morning. There is some schedule room, but not much. 20 minutes before startup, Devin receives the call. The assigned Station 6 operator is out. Again, the absence is legitimate. Devin is not going to waste time turning the employee into a villain because that does nothing for the line. Station 6 has no operator. That is the problem. Devin walks line 2 before startup. Upstream subassembly stations can begin producing. Downstream verification and packout can remain ready for a while, but neither side can stay productive unless Station 6 keeps feeding the line. If Devin starts at the planned rate without stabilizing Station 6, the result is not mysterious. Upstream work in process will accumulate. Station 6 will fall behind, downstream stations will wait, the line will lose balance, the shipment window will tighten. Doing nothing is not acceptable. The problem is active, so identify and postpone does not fit. Devin cannot capture the staffing issue for later, while pretending line 2 can run normally. The gap is already interfering with the objective. Strategic evasion does not fit either. There may have been an earlier opportunity to strengthen relief coverage, cross-training, or staffing resilience. That window is gone. The issue is already in contact with the operation. Devin needs a containment move now. The quality technician understands the product, but moving that person weakens verification and may shift the bottleneck to release. The material handler knows the components, but moving that person can weaken replenishment and create material starvation later. A Packout employee has assisted at Station 6, but helping is not the same as independently owning it. Exposure is not qualification. Even when prepared, moving that person upstream can create a finished goods queue before shipping. The strongest operator from Line 3 could stabilize Station 6, but Line 3 has its own objective. Devin may be transferring the risk instead of reducing it. The line lead can perform the work, but if the lead becomes the full-time operator, the line gains a worker and loses the person responsible for balance, coordination, communication, and escalation. That is not a free exchange. None of Devin's options has zero cost. Leaders sometimes waste time looking for a painless answer after the operating condition has already changed. There may not be one. Tactical resolution does not promise a clean answer with no trade-off. It demands that the trade-off be understood, bounded, and controlled. The weak response is to combine partial answers, move quality for an hour, use material support for breaks, pull from Packout after lunch, let the line lead fill the gaps, borrow from Line 3 when the bottleneck falls behind. That may look flexible, it is unstable. Station 6 keeps changing hands. Rhythm, judgment, ownership, and communication keep changing with it. The staffing plan becomes musical chairs with torque specifications, except every empty chair has a customer attached to it. Everybody is moving. Nobody owns the condition long enough to stabilize it. That is the difference between activity and control. I have made versions of this mistake. Not this exact production scenario, but the leadership pattern. You see an active gap, you want to protect the objective, and you begin pulling resources toward the visible failure point. It feels responsible because you are acting. Then you look up and realize you weakened 3 other parts of the operation to strengthen one. The lesson is not that leaders should hesitate. The lesson is that urgency does not excuse a narrow read. Actually, let me back that up. Urgency makes the wider read more important because the cost of a broad, sloppy move arrives faster. Devin needs to target the interference before choosing the fix. The callout is the cause, but the active interference is more specific. Station 6 cannot sustain enough output to keep upstream and downstream work balanced without prepared coverage. That is the point Devin must stabilize. The whole plan is not the problem. The entire shift does not need to be reorganized. 4 departments do not need to be stripped down. Line 2 needs enough prepared coverage at Station 6 to establish a stable temporary operating condition. That narrower definition protects the wider floor. Then Devin has to inspect collateral risk. What will each staffing remove from somewhere else? What control becomes weaker? What burden gets transferred to someone with less authority or less capacity? That is a justice issue as much as an operations issue. You cannot remove quality, material, or pack-out support, preserve the same expectations, and then blame the team when performance drops. Authority, responsibility, staffing, and consequence have to stay connected. Anything else transfers the cost of the leadership decision downward. Devin has to name the trade-off before he makes the move. Move quality and verification changes. Move material support and replenishment changes. Move pack-out and downstream capacity changes. Move the Line 3 operator and the adjacent line weakens. Move the line lead and oversight changes. Use an unprepared employee and workmanship, rework, safety, and confidence may change. The staffing decision is not complete because Devin can point to a person. He has to understand what that person's movement does to the surrounding operation. You have not removed the bottleneck merely because it left Station 6. You may have franchised it. That does not mean every risk can be removed. The plant is already operating inside a compromised condition. The standard is not no cost. The standard is controlled cost. This is where operational discipline matters most. The supervisor is not choosing between an uncomplicated option and a destabilizing one. Devin is choosing among imperfect alternatives, each introducing an organizational consequence. The responsibility is to accept the unavoidable compromise without pretending every department can lose a person and continue smiling like nothing happened. Devin needs the narrowest move that reduces the active interference without spreading unnecessary damage. One properly prepared cross-trained operator is available from a lower priority run on another line. Moving that person will delay some lower priority work. That is a consequence, and Devin should not pretend otherwise. But the lower priority work has more schedule room. It is not tied to the same shipment pressure. The delay can be controlled without creating a second customer failure. Now we are getting somewhere. Devin moves that prepared operator to Station 6. Then he does something leaders sometimes resist. He adjusts Line 2 to a temporary rate the new staffing condition can actually sustain. The original rate was built around the original staffing condition. That condition is gone, demanding the same rate after removing one of the conditions required to produce it is not discipline, and it is denial. The customer order still matters. Throughput still matters. The shipment still matters. But forcing the original rate through a weaker staffing condition may create rushed work, unstable handoffs, delayed checks, work in process accumulation, and rework. Devin is not surrendering the objective by adjusting the rate. He is protecting the objective from an unstable response. Quality remains in place. Material support remains intact. Packout keeps the staffing needed for the temporary output. The line lead stays responsible for the line. Upstream work in process is limited so the line does not build an uncontrolled queue in front of Station 6. The adjacent line is not stripped of several people. The plant accepts a controlled impact on lower priority production instead of spreading weak coverage across multiple functions. That is tactical resolution. It is enough action to reduce the interference. It is not so much action that the fix becomes the next problem, and the original rate may not survive unchanged. The customer order still may, and that is the objective. Manufacturing leaders sometimes treat the production board like a moral standard. The target is posted, so anything below it feels like failure. Senior leaders may be watching. Planning built the schedule around that number. The supervisor does not want to explain why the line started below plan. I understand that pressure. It still does not make the original rate sacred. A production target reflects an expected operating condition. When that condition changes, the leader has to update the operating expectation. A temporary rate Producing controlled, usable output is stronger than an aggressive rate-producing queues, rushed work, delayed verification, and rework. The production board does not ship anything. It mostly hangs there judging people like it personally built the order. The production system ships the order. Do not stabilize the production board. Stabilize the production system. The decision also needs a reassessment point. A temporary staffing move cannot be made at startup and then ignored for the rest of the shift. The cross-trained operator may stabilize Station 6. The adjusted rate may protect flow. Upstream work in process may remain controlled. Downstream verification and Packout may keep receiving enough output. Or the temporary condition may begin weakening after an hour. The operator may fatigue. Station 6 may fall behind. Work in process may build again. Quality may see a new pattern. Packout may become constrained. The adjacent line may be losing more than Devon expected. The stabilization move has to be checked while it can still be changed. That is not administrative busy work. It is command responsibility. Devon needs to know whether Station 6 is holding the rate, work in process is controlled, downstream stations are receiving enough output, quality and material flow remain intact, Packout is keeping pace, and the shipment is still protected. If the move is working, hold it while the run continues. If collateral damage is growing, adjust it. If Station 6 cannot stabilize, Devon may need another deepened strategy. Stronger intervention, a different sequence, deeper analysis, or another controlled path may become necessary. The leader does not wait for the workaround to fail completely before admitting the workaround is weak. Improvisation says we filled the gap, keep going. Controlled stabilization says we reduce the interference. These are the limits, these are the controls we are protecting, and this is when we check whether the move still makes sense. One gets the line moving, the other keeps the leader in control. There is a human responsibility here too. The operator who called out should not become the explanation for every weakness the call-out exposed. That would be dishonest. One absence should not automatically destabilize an entire production line. When it does, the shift has exposed a single-point staffing dependency, weak relief coverage, an insufficient cross-training pool, or a line balance problem. That structural weakness belongs to leadership and the operating system. It does not belong entirely to the person who was unable to report to work that day. Hold the employee accountable for what was within the employee's control. Hold leadership accountable for the resilience of the production system. Do not merge those responsibilities because blame is easier than inspection. The active problem today is Station 6 coverage. The permanent problem is production resilience. Tactical resolution protects the shift while the permanent issue stays visible and owned. That ownership cannot disappear once the order ships. Temporary fixes become dangerous when one successful shift is mistaken for proof that the system is sound. The next call-out arrives, the plant delays the same work, pulls the same cross-trained operator, and uses the same temporary rate. Congratulations. The emergency workaround has been promoted without an interview, a job description, or adult supervision. It starts functioning like policy, even though nobody approved it as the operating model. That is not resilience. That is dependence on a workaround. Tactical resolution stabilized the immediate interference. It did not prove the staffing structure was acceptable. Devon needs to capture what the shift exposed. Station 6 has a single-point staffing dependency. Relief coverage is limited. The cross-training pool may be too narrow. The planned rate may depend too heavily on one person. Those findings need an owner after the active run is stabilized. The temporary operator eventually returns to the original assignment. The delayed work has to be rescheduled. The cross-training gap needs review. Relief coverage may need correction. The line balance may need another look. Tactical resolution does not erase that work. It creates enough controlled operating space to complete the current objective without making the system worse. That is honest leadership. You do not claim the root problem is solved because the order shipped. You say we stabilized the interference, protected the shipment, limited the damage, and now we have permanent work to do. The weakness would be pretending the workaround solved the system. Now bring the larger direct action system in lightly. CSA gives Devon the wider read. Deepen identifies the right movement because the problem is active and still has a practical containment option. Pro checks what the temporary move could damage. ACE compares the options. TMC protects the assignment, rate, communication, and reassessment. ALC captures what the call-out exposed. Read the condition, choose the response, check the collateral risk, communicate the limits, reassess, capture the structural gaps. The primary tool remains tactical resolution. And now think about your own floor. What happened the last time a qualified operator called out from a critical position? Did the supervisor pull from quality, material support, packout, maintenance, or another line? Did an unprepared employee enter the station? Did the line lead stop leading the line? Did the plant hold the original rate while work in process stacked? Those questions show whether the move stabilized the interference or spread it. Start with the objective. What customer order, production sequence, quality requirement, or shipment window are you protecting? Then name the exact interference. Do not stop at, we are short one person. Where is the staffing gap affecting the line? Is it slowing the bottleneck, creating uncontrolled work in process, starving downstream stations, delaying verification? Protect the controls that cannot be casually stripped. Quality coverage, required checks, material replenishment, packout, line leadership, adjacent customer critical work. Then look for the narrowest prepared move that can stabilize the interference, not the fastest body, not the most convenient person. Prepared coverage that keeps the objective moving without creating unnecessary second-order damage. Accept that the temporary rate may need to change. That can be hard to say out loud. Say it anyway. The original number is not sacred when the operating condition required to produce it no longer exists. Set the reassessment point. Do not let the workaround run for the entire shift without inspection. Then capture what the call-out exposed. When the same position keeps destabilizing the same line, you do not have a series of unrelated call-outs. You have a resilience problem. Do not use tactical resolution to hide it. The field level read is straightforward. The objective is this. The interference point is this. If we do nothing, the line loses control here. If we respond too broadly, the wider operation may fail here. The minimum effective move is this. We will check it at this point. The permanent gap belongs to this owner. That is not the full tactical resolution method. It is enough to stop the supervisor from turning one staffing gap into several production failures. One call-out does not have to break the line. The bottleneck needs enough prepared coverage to keep the objective moving. Quality still needs protection. Material still has to move. Packout still has to flow. The neighboring line still has commitments. The line lead still has to lead. Do not solve one staffing gap by creating three more. Do not stabilize the production board. Stabilize the production system. Use the minimum effective move. Protect the surrounding controls. State the temporary limit. Reassess quickly. Assign the permanent correction. Temporary does not mean careless. Tactical resolution is how a leader acts when the problem is active. The full solution is unavailable, and the operation still has to move. Stabilize the interference. Do not overcorrect the line. When you are ready to go deeper with this tool, go to direct-action-system.io/course-directory. Open the course directory. Find the course tied to decision execution and problem navigation and start there. That is where the deeper application belongs. Thanks for listening to the briefing.